fill in the blank. You're not getting any younger, so
do the thing, make the choice, talk to the person, live your life.
Hey you! Yes, you! Welcome to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. A podcast for people who want to disrupt their lives for a good reason, to make it count. I'm your host, Jen Glantz, and every week I'll drop a new episode with stories from real people just like you, who woke up one morning and decided to make big changes, starting with small things. We'll cover topics like entrepreneurship, love, failure, and self-care. Hey, you're not getting any younger, so let's make this an adventure. Ready? Hey, any youngers, welcome back to another episode of the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. It's me, your host, Jen Glantz. I'm here with you podcasting my face off on a Friday night. You know, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I am so at an age where the number one thing I want to do on a Friday night is find that little piece of my couch that I can just put my body on and I instantly fold into it and sulk into the couch, and then I wrap the blanket around me, and you get the point. I just want to be on my couch, which is crazy because I remember being in my mid-20s, moving to New York, living here, going out every Friday, every Saturday, every Sunday, every Monday, you get it, and thinking to myself, I hope this never ends. And when this ends, I'm going to be so upset. I'm not going to like my life. And it's just wild to me because I have made a complete 180 and don't enjoy that anymore. I enjoy sitting on my couch, talking to you. And after I am done recording this episode, I am going to go to my kitchen and I'm going to warm up some pizza. And you know what? Things are going to get crazy because then I'm going to open up the freezer and I'm going to have some ice cream. And that is going to be a solid Friday night for me. I wonder, has your Friday nights changed too? Have you evolved from doing one thing to now doing something else? Maybe you're the opposite of me. Maybe you're the kind of person who loved staying on their couch, but now you absolutely love going out. And if that is you, if that is true, please hit me up. We should influence each other. You should drag me out. I should drag you to my couch. We should hang. If you're new to this show, welcome. If you're old to this show, I love you. Thanks for being here. Either way, come hang out with us in the secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group. We'd love to have you there. There's over 1,400 people who are hanging out and chatting and asking the kinds of questions that are floating on your head, but sometimes you feel like you have nobody else to ask. And as always, if you like this show, if you enjoy this show, if you listen to this show, give us a review on iTunes. Literally just take your phone right now in your hand, scroll down to the bottom, give us a review. Why do we ask for those things? It just helps more people find this show, and it means so much to me. We have an amazing guest on our show today. The topic of the show is how to use your voice, and that means using your voice in all different types of situations, from public speaking to standing up for yourself, or even just having a conversation and bringing forward your authentic voice. In this episode, we have some amazing tools and tricks that you can use to help you strengthen your voice. One of them involves a straw. It's awesome. I can't stop trying it. I can't stop using it. I think you're going to love it. Our guest this week is Erin Clark. She's a professional actress who, after 18 months on tour with Les Mis, decided that she wanted to find an answer to the question of, what can I do to help other people? Using her passion for the human voice, she is the co-founder of Vital Voice Training, a voice and speech coaching company on a mission to change the conversation about what women are supposed to sound like. How incredible is that? I have a feeling you're going to love this episode ahead of you, so go ahead, enjoy it, listen, come in the Facebook group, and tell us what you learned. All right, I'm going to pass it on over to Casey. Casey, how are you?
Hey, Jen. I'm doing great. I'm glad to be talking to you.
You too. How's your new year been so far?
Really productive in that way that I often am at the very beginning of January. I wish I could sustain it for the whole year,
Oh, I feel you. I was just thinking about the metaphor of like running a mile, and I feel like I've just started like a 4 minute mile pace that I know I can't keep up with. So I'm like trying to catch my breath a
Yeah.
little bit. Yeah, I feel like that's a common thread with the new year. But how would you describe who you are to a person you just met at a party?
The thing I've been opening with recently is referring to myself as a semi-recovering professional actor who occasionally falls off the wagon and does an off-Broadway show like I did last summer. But I am a voice, public speaking, and communication coach. I also work with singers. So my whole life kind of revolves around the voice. It's other people's voices. It's my own voice. And it's what I'm most passionate about on the whole planet.
So tell us a little bit about how you got into this world. You mentioned off Broadway. I know you've done a lot of different shows throughout your life. How did you get into the world of being on stage and performing?
Sure. So I've been singing since I was little bitty. Like my very first solo in public at church was when I think I was 4 years old, and sang with my family, Von Trapp style. It was very nerdy. And got into musical theater sort of in junior high and high school, and majored in musical theater in college, and pursued professional acting in New York City as soon as I graduated. So it's always been part of my life in different iterations, depending on sort of the style of music that was in my life at the time. And when you're an actor, frankly, you're often unemployed. That's kind of just the natural state of things when you have a profession that is so hugely oversaturated with talent and undersaturated, to say the least, with jobs. So I always had to have a support job, and I had a whole variety of them throughout my career. But the one that I always liked the most was teaching singing. And I started out teaching singing to both kids and to my peers within the acting community. And when I got back from the national tour of Les Mis in 2012, I went on an interview that I thought was for a singing coach position. And it turned out they needed a speech coach. And I thought, yeah, I think I could do that. And my very first client was Christy Harrison, who hosts the incredible podcast Food Psych, and who just has a new book out right now called Anti-Diet, which is just phenomenal. And she had been losing her voice recording her podcast, and so she was concerned about her vocal health. She also just didn't love the sound of her voice. And so we worked on things like breath and like sustaining energy through a sentence and color and style and having fun with text. And I really fell in love with it, and it became my life's work.
I feel a little embarrassed to talk to you today, Casey, in all honesty, because I'm losing my voice.
Oh, no!
And I've been losing it because I've been using it. I've been speaking like 9 hours a day straight. So when you just said that, I thought to myself, oh no, can Casey tell? Can everyone else tell? So this is amazing. I'm actually so happy that you said that, and I'm so excited to speak to you about the power of our voice. And, you've been using it powerfully for your own profession, but when you started to train people, what were some of the things you noticed that people do when they use their voice wrong?
Sure. So this is kind of a core bit of our philosophy, is that we don't like to put it in those terms, like what you're doing wrong. And specifically, I think because we started Vital Voice Training, my partner Julie and I started Vital Voice Training within a climate of intense criticism of women's voices in particular, young women's voices in particular. So we were talking about things like vocal fry and upspeak and all of the ways that young women are sort of, ruining their gravitas or annoying people or whatever. And it goes back to the core of how public speaking and elocution training has happened throughout history, which is based on a model of put on your serious voice and then people will take you seriously, which if you pick it apart and you examine it, comes back to Audre Lorde's concept of the mythic norm. The mythic norm being, in America, in the world at large, still the white man. And so for so long, everyone who was outside that norm was being told to imitate that as a way to sound professional, as a way to sound like they knew what they were talking about, like they were intelligent, like they were somebody that you could take seriously. So when we talk to people about their voices, the first thing that we want people to understand is how incredibly complex their voice is. Your voice is made up of everything that makes you, you on the planet. And we do not develop our habits in a vacuum. We always develop our vocal and communication habits in context of other human beings. And we're doing it both to survive and to succeed. So a lot of the things that people criticize about women's voices, I'll use vocal fry for an example. So vocal fry is that kind of like creaky, like a little bit raspy sound. Sometimes there's like a lot of nasality in it, like kind of like a Kardashian voice, right? So it's a very distinctive sound. It's accomplished with some extra tension in the vocal cords and a lack of breath support, but when you hear that voice, you immediately know or get an idea of who I am and what community I belong to. It's a sign of belonging. It's a sign of fitting in. So we develop these vocal habits in the context of wanting to fit into a community or wanting to stand out in a community. So what we want to get to is a wider version of what your voice can do, a deeper knowledge of how it works physically, a deeper knowledge of how it works socially and emotionally and mentally. And then you can make the choices that make you feel the most like you in the places that you want to show up.
Wow. I mean, this is incredibly fascinating. I didn't know any of this before what you just told us. And I think it is so interesting that you said that our voice, I love the quote when you said your voice is made up of everything that makes you, you on the planet. Does your voice change when you enter a new community or even if you enter a new group of people that you're very influenced by and want to be like?
Absolutely. That is like spot on way to describe it. So the thing that we talk about is the idea of communication micro societies. So basically every little group that you're a part of. So if you have a partner, you and your partner are a communication microsociety. You and your family, when you grew up, were a communication microsociety. Now, let's say that you have a team in your office. That's a communication microsociety within a larger society of the office at large, within the larger society of the industry that you're in. And in all of those contexts, there are rules of engagement, and we may never speak those rules out loud, but because human beings are so socially cooperative, we adapt to those rules with incredible effectiveness often. And so we're picking up these habits in different environments. If you've ever noticed how you pick up your friends' catchphrases, this is like a perfect example of this. We have rhythm of speech and how each society handles interruptions, how each society handles volume, what is considered attractive, what's considered something that would be worthy of ostracization. Like all of these things kind of come together, and we on both a conscious and a subconscious level will adapt to fit in to this little communication microsociety.
So let me ask you, do you think that that's okay? Because I know so many people when I was growing up and when I was trying to fit in, people would say to me, Jen, you talk so different around different people. And I want to know from, what you think from a confidence and a women's empowerment focus. Should a woman have one voice, one powerful voice that they bring with them everywhere? Or should we as women adapt to our surroundings and our situation?
This is such a good question, and it has a very, I think, complex answer. So I want to address a couple of things. So first of all, everyone's voices change depending on their context. The thing we always say is nobody talks to a puppy the same way they talk to their boss.
Could you imagine?
Right? No one has one voice or even, dare I say, one uniform personality for every situation in their life. We are all multifaceted human beings. We contain multitudes. Now, of course, sometimes that can start to look inauthentic if you're doing a lot of really conscious, trying to fit in. And we pick that up as human beings. We pick it up. It's one of the reasons why to be honest, I've kind of always hated the phrase fake it till you make it, because we pick up on that. We all have this internal BS meter, right? So I prefer the idea of practice it till it drops in. I used to say practice it till you perfect it, but I don't actually believe in perfecting it either. I believe in practicing it and experimenting with it. So there's that. Everybody's voices are adaptable. There's also the fact that for some people, the consequences of not fitting in to a society, wherever it is, are way more dire than for other people, right? That's just the reality of unconscious bias. It's the reality of racism and sexism and homophobia and transphobia and all of these different things that are just realities of where we live. So when we work with people, again, the idea is, let's get to know the tools that you have naturally. We always come back to this idea of communication core values. We actually just built this brand new workbook that I'm really, really, really excited to launch this year, on building a communication manifesto for yourself that has within it the flexibility to bring different parts of yourself forward in different situations. We have some, I think really weird ideas about authenticity in general. Authenticity is not a fixed point. Authenticity is not, I act however I want, no matter who I'm in front of or no matter what the situation is. That's not authenticity. That's just rudeness, right? There is flexibility within authenticity for us, and there's intentionality within authenticity. So that's a really complex answer to a really complex question. But I think at the end of the day, the thing that makes it work for me and what I want is for people to do a little bit of both, to choose how much they want to adapt and how much they want to fit in to do the work that they need to do on the planet, but also to choose when they need to stand out, when they need to be separate, be different, be challenging the status quo, because we need those voices too. I mean, the more that we hear and see different styles of leadership, different styles of communication, the more we expand our definition of what a leader looks and sounds like. And we're seeing that now. It's happening as we stumble haltingly toward a more diverse and inclusive world.
Amen to that. And I think that's one of the best things about where we are with a society and what we're moving toward. I know myself personally, one of the things I struggle with, I've been working so hard on, is speaking up for myself, especially in challenging situations. I'm secretly a little bit introverted, a little bit shy. And one of the things that happens to me, Casey, is that my voice starts to shake. And not only shake, but it starts to do all of these crazy weird things where if I don't swallow, it sounds like I'm choking. And oh my goodness, it is really an odd sounding thing that happens to my voice. And I know there's people listening who have shaky voices when they get nervous. So what kind of tips can you give us for that nervous voice? The one that when we are trying to stand up for ourselves, trying to use our voice, even just trying to publicly speak, but it's not something we love to do. What can we do to handle that nervous voice?
We love talking about nerves. Nerves are they're so universal. So step one is we have to de-shame the idea of being nervous in a high stakes situation. There is no shame in feeling that feeling of nerves, right? So there's some really phenomenal brain science research out there on nerves and fear and stress and the ways that our body reacts to that stuff. And one of the biggest things to understand is that nerves are natural. Nerves are your brain doing exactly what your brain is supposed to do in that scenario, because what's happening is that your brain is perceiving a threat in your environment. And unfortunately, the part of your brain that perceives threats, the amygdala, can't actually tell the difference between like a stressful conversation with your boss where you're asking for a raise or an actual lion in the corner of the room that wants to eat you. It literally cannot tell the difference. So it's doing all the same things to your body that it would be doing if you were facing a deadly threat. Now, obviously, public speaking, even though the old chestnut is people do fear public speaking worse than death, public speaking usually isn't a life or death situation. Neither is necessarily standing up for yourself. but our bodies perceive it as such. So, number one, nerves are not a sign that you're bad at this. Nerves are not a sign that you're broken. They're just a sign that you're a human being with a working nervous system. Number two, if you can have a little chat with your nervous system, with your amygdala, and be like, oh, hey, I know what my body's doing right now. Right at the beginning of the process, before it sort of spirals out, notice what's happening in your body as you start to get nervous. If it's that clammy feeling on the back of your neck, or the shaky voice, or the lump in your throat that you were talking about, that's a very common one. And then just observe it for a second. Breathing is huge. Swallowing is actually a great thing. If you're going into a stressful conversation, maybe bring a water bottle in with you so you have something to swallow. There are things that you can do, but I think the biggest key to this is just de-shaming it, and then learning that it can be there and be running in the background, but only be part of the story. This is what actors learn. Actors learn how to do the hard thing in the midst of being nervous, and that just takes practice, a lot of practice.
Yeah, no, I think that everything you're saying is so useful. And I always like to tell myself, does it really matter if they hear that your voice is shaking? Like, is that the thing the person's going to remember? Because I never remember about anyone that I speak to.
Nope.
Like it's never the thing that I take away is, oh, wow, this person's voice was shaking. That's never what I remember. So I like to do the things that you said, and I need to start bringing water with me. I need to start having those pep talks beforehand. And we have a question from Amy in the You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group. She says, Casey, I am never the loudest voice in the room. I find that I get intimidated. I find that when I try to speak up, I either sound very low or I just don't use my voice at all. What tips do you have for someone like me?
So when you are working in a communication microsociety with a core value of the loudest voice wins, or if you kind of have to interrupt in order to get your voice on the table, I find it really helpful to have some scripts ready that you have memorized. So let's say that you've got an idea and you're in an environment where you really do have to jump in, to really jump in to get your voice heard. Starting with, I'd like to jump in on that. Or I have an idea, anything like that draws the attention of the room onto you before you actually get to your content, I think can be really helpful. But here's the biggest tip/trick that I can give you. Most of the time when people want to interrupt and they're a little nervous about it, they'll do this little catch breath thing. They'll go, you know what I mean? And it becomes this really shallow little catch breath, and then they try to talk, but then they kind of stop themselves. So it almost ends up sounding like a hiccup. Your biggest tip for me today is, if you want to interrupt, if you want to jump in and get your idea heard, find your gravity in your chair. We always say, let your butt be big, right? Find your gravity in your chair. Take a full breath and speak on the exhale, right? So breathe in. I'd like to jump in on that. That's going to fuel the volume of your voice more than a struggle or a tension in the throat, right? Air is the fuel for our speech. So that will help you. The other thing you can do, and this is a little theater trick too, is you can shift your body position before you take that deep breath, or as you're taking that deep breath. That draws the eye into the room onto you. It's called pulling focus. So pull a little focus physically, take a deep breath, speak on your exhale.
Wow. I absolutely find that fascinating. I do that thing with my throat too, where I'm like, I sound like I'm gasping for air as I try to enter the conversation. So I think that's fascinating. And so when you shift your body in the chair, is that just sort of a nonverbal way of getting people to look at you and make eye contact with you? What exactly happens when you make that body shift?
Yeah, it's just drawing attention, right? The sort of nuclear option of that is to actually stand up if you want to say something, but I've seen that work really, really well. Not everybody can pull that one off, and I think sometimes it has to do with the power dynamic in the room. But let's say that everybody's in the middle of a really contentious discussion, right? And everybody's kind of ping-ponging the stuff across the table. Let me tell you what's going to draw the eye. If you stand up and just wait, you will draw the eyes of the room.
Oh, for sure. I feel like it's what my teachers used to do in school when everyone was talking over them, and it worked. Everyone would respect them after that. So I think that could be a great trick. The final thing I want to ask you about is how people can practice this at home. So they have a big presentation coming up. They have to go into a meeting and ask for a raise. What kind of vocal warm-ups could they do at home, in the bathroom, maybe even at their cubicle if possible, before having to walk in the room and use their voice? If there's just one or two different things they can do.
Totally. Well, so a couple of specific things. First of all, this has the added benefit of helping with stress hormones, moving your body, right? If you can go take a brisk walk before a presentation, it's going to help metabolize some of those stress hormones. I always say, don't exercise to burn calories, exercise to burn stress, right? Even if it's going into the bathroom and doing a few jumping jacks, it's going to just get your blood flowing, get things moving around, right? If you want to, if you're dealing with vocal fatigue, if you're dealing with, oh, my voice is quiet, chances are you're not using your breath as efficiently as you might be. So we actually love straw exercises. I know straws are a little fraught right now. I actually just got some metal straws for Christmas. I'm so excited about it. But if you take like a Starbucks venti straw and a glass of water, put 2 inches of water in the bottom of a glass of water, blow air through that straw and make bubbles, just like you blow bubbles in your chocolate milk as a kid, and then blow sound through the straw, almost like a kazoo, right? And just hum into the water, and you're going to see the bubbles move. That means that your voice is being supported by air. Then what you can do is take the straw just above the surface of the water and try doing that same thing with the sound. Blow through like a kazoo, send the sound all the way down into the water, and part the waters like Moses. That's going to make sure that your voice and your breath are connected. That's a great, great physical warm-up. If you don't have a straw, you can actually just do it on a V sound, V as in victory. Just kind of hum on a V, just like that. It's really, really gentle on the vocal cords, and it helps get that voice up and forward and resonant and ready to speak.
Love everything about this. How long should people do the straw trick? Because I can see people doing it for 30 minutes or for 3 minutes, and I think this is a brilliant trick. So what is a good amount of time to do this?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you start to feel some like nice buzz in your lips, like it might tickle a little bit after 30 seconds or so, that's when you know it's starting to get nice and warm. So, a minute or two, you don't need to spend a ton of time on it, but definitely breathing through the straw or breathing out and making sound on a V, very, very helpful for vocal warm-ups.
Casey, this is fantastic. I want to end this interview like we end them all. I'm going to ask you to fill in the blank. You're not getting any younger, so
do the thing, make the choice, talk to the person, live your life.
I love it. Casey, you are a rock star. Please tell our audience where they can find out more about you and Vital Voice Training.
So you can go to our website, www.vitalvoicetraining.com. Follow us on Instagram at Vital Voice Training, on Twitter, Vital_Voice. And we have a podcast of our own that we're so excited about called Voice Is. We're talking to incredible guests. We're digging real deep on what makes your voice unique and different sort of themes every week. And we're just really loving getting into the podcasting thing ourselves.
Amazing. And I love the name of the podcast. I thought it was so creative when I saw that. So that was such a cool name. Casey, thank you so much again for being on our show today.
Oh my gosh. And Jen, you're going to have to come be a guest on my show.
Yes, I would love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, you. Thank you for listening to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. There are hundreds of thousands of pods out there, so thank you for listening to this one. You can find the show notes for this week's episode up on our website, anyyounger.com. Subscribe, rate, and review the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast on iTunes so that other ears around the world can listen too. Oh, and join our secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group, where over 1,000 people are talking about how to disrupt their lives, for a good reason, to make it count. Until next week, all my love, Jen Glantz.